from your home of the Tokyo Olympics. This is the 630 with Sean Osley.
And so to have this beautiful mountain on the landscape suddenly become active and erupt, you know, that was just such a foreign thing for so many people in the United States. I mean, it's no wonder that it captured their attention.
Well, frozen in time, Mount St. Helens, raw power, force, deadly. 41 years later, it's an event that brings out photos of Spokane, turning to night from day in minutes. The region covered in volcanic ash, and a realization that for the first time ever in many of our lifetimes, we'd seen a volcano erupt in the continental U.S. Before that, 1914 in California. Where were you? 41 years ago today, a 5.1 earthquake rocking the Cascade Mountain Range moments before Mount St. Helens northern summit collapsed, rushing down the mountain at a speed of 300 miles per hour, killing 57 people. The volcano spewing more than 1.5 tons of ash into the sky. That ash traveling across the U.S. and right here into eastern Washington, turning the sky to near total darkness in the middle of the afternoon. It was surreal. You remember it. More than 4 decades later, the event sticks squarely in our minds, an event like no other. Thanks for joining us tonight on the 630. In tonight's 360 coverage, we detail the history of that deadly eruption of Mount St. Helens, images from right here that day, and what scientists have learned, which volcano in the Cascade Range they're most concerned about right now, and how geologists are using what they learned from that catastrophic event to try to come up with warning signs going forward.
Do you mean to tell me that we can put a man on the moon and you can't even tell us whether the volcano will erupt or not? And I said, that's correct. We cannot tell.
Well, tonight's 360 coverage begins. The echoes from scientists who experienced the eruption and fallout in 1980 are the same today as scientists work to monitor Mount St. Helens and other volcanoes across the Pacific Northwest. In 1980, the wind blowing that ash from the violent eruption directly here into eastern Washington. While new models and studies from the U.S. Geological Survey show when it happens again, the impacts could reach a greater portion of the population. This forecast showing if the same event were to happen today, ash could cross up into Canada and reach the east coast of the U.S. Well, technology is light years ahead of what it was in 1980. Seismometers, advanced GPS tracking, and landscape mapping so much better, so much more detailed. Watching any rise, however small, of the layers of land near a volcano can be a warning sign. Tonight, John Major with Cascades Volcano Observatory with an in-depth look at the St. Helens 1980 blast and the critical work being done now.
What we actually know now about Mount St. Helens is that really large landslide is about the 4th time in the history over the last 20,000 years that large landslides like that have come off the flank of Mount St. Helens. So that was not unique to 1980. Even that lateral blast, that big blast that swept across the landscape and it mowed all the trees down, and it's the event that caused most of the fatalities at Mount St. Helens. Something like that has happened in the past, but not to that degree.
That's a moment that is absolutely frozen in time. And as we look at it, I remember that day, the way the winds were blowing, Seattle didn't get much ashfall. Here in Spokane, it's day turned to night in a matter of minutes. The entire town was covered in ash, people sweeping it off their roofs, off their cars. There's still ash along the I-90 corridor all the way out through Ritzville. It was the way the winds were blowing that day. Is that how you view it?
That's right. I mean, in the Cascades, our prevailing wind direction is from the west to the east. And so if you use the crest of the Cascades as kind of a boundary marker, the communities that are east of the Cascades, Yakima, Ritzville, and Spokane, and places like that, this volcanic ashfall is the biggest hazard that's presented to you folks.
Mount Hood, there's Mount Baker, of course, Mount Rainier, very close proximity to Seattle. What's the stability like? What are the type of signs that you see as you're able to study those with this modern technology?
So right now, we have a pretty good idea of the eruptive histories of these volcanoes up and down the Cascades. And we also have a pretty good idea of the types of eruptions that they have had in their past. So by knowing how frequently they tend to erupt and the types of processes that are operative during eruptions, we have a pretty good idea of what the hazards are to the different populations around the volcanoes. As magma works its way up toward the surface, think of a balloon that's beginning to inflate. The ground surface will begin to rise a little bit, and we can detect those changes. And these are the things we look for. So what we want to do, one of the things we're trying to do, is to make sure that the amount of instrumentation on any given volcano is commensurate with the threat that that volcano poses to society.
As you look at the entire Cascade Range, is there one that kind of has a higher level of concern that you keep your eye on a little bit more right now?
Yeah, so one of the ones we're really keeping our eye on is Mount Rainier, because Mount Rainier has had a history of shedding these really large volcanic mudflows that can travel really, really long distances. In fact, in its past, Mount Rainier has shed large mudflows that have made it all the way down to the Puget Sound lowlands. And so particularly over on the western side where some of the larger populations are along the river valleys, if one of those really large mudflows was to occur and go down some of those river systems to the west, there are some pretty substantial populations that are potentially at risk.
There's kind of an awe of Mount St. Helens, obviously the raw power of that day, but how it has cemented in the history of anybody that lived in this area or anybody that saw the news coverage 41 years ago. Why is it such a preeminent event in people's minds where they just stop and they think about it and they remember, and it's kind of a visceral emotion for everybody?
In 1980, probably most people's perception of a volcanic eruption was this nice fluid lava that you see over in Hawaii. Right? You get these nice red rock rivers, these nice fluid lavas that flow down the landscape. People can stand there and photograph it and film it. That's probably what people thought of when they thought about a volcanic eruption in 1980. They didn't think about these big explosive things or mountains, just falling apart under, their own power, or launching these gigantic plumes of ash into the air that then travel hundreds of miles downwind, or these, rivers of mud, traveling tens and tens of miles downstream. So I think just that whole combination of, not understanding that the Cascades were volcanoes, not having ever seen anything like that in the continental U.S., and then just the raw power of nature. I think that was just such a powerful combination that, it's no wonder it's just seared into the memory of people who were around at the time.
All of you can relate if you were here. And here is, and many of you have this, leftover ash from Mount St. Helens collected. It was all over the Spokane area. And obviously, many of you kept it as a memento of that day, May 18th, 1980. Ash still lying around our area, and of course at the base of Mount St. Helens. Now, the last time Mount St. Helens was showing signs of rumbling was between 2004 and 2008. It became pretty active again. Starting in October of 2004, lava dome began growing in January of 2008. The new dome did not rise above the rim of the crater created by the 1980 eruption. We'll continue with 360 coverage. Just last month, the Washington State Emergency Management Division releasing a new way to help you prepare before an earthquake hits. System operated by USGS gives users a warning right before they feel a quake. System called Shake Alert does not predict earthquakes, but rather rapidly detects them, gives information about size and location. New system also has the potential to close water valves, lift fire station doors, slow down trains. If you'd like to sign up to receive Shake Alerts from Emergency Management, we've linked step-by-step instructions to KHQ.com. And for more of tonight's expansive 360 coverage on the anniversary of Mount St. Helens, go to KHQ.com, click on the 630 section.